So let's start with this. Um, it's interesting because just as an example of how I think we are aware of how other people are responding to us, and we have motivations
Okay.
of what we choose to do, how we conduct ourselves, how we carry ourselves, what we wear. Uh, that
We as
all
human beings have
human
that.
beings,
Yes, yes.
absolutely. Maybe other species do as well too.
Well, I didn't know if you meant just we as you and me.
Well, in this example, it's going to be you and I.
Okay.
But there is an element of life where I am aware of how are people reacting to me.
Okay.
Absolutely, right?
Okay.
Because it's interesting because in the last month or less, I've gotten rid of all facial hair, which I've had for decades. A goatee typically would be a normal thing, other than the few times I would just go clean and then grow it right back. But one of my curiosities, and maybe even attachments, was who's going to say something? Who would even, wow, Corey, you look different. What's going on? Right.
Yeah.
And very, very few actually do.
So maybe they're not thinking about you as much as you think they
Well,
do.
that is absolutely true.
Is that your point?
That is absolutely true. We're not as important to other people as sometimes we think we are. But also the flip side of this, I think, is important of awareness of those around us and acknowledging that speaks to them.
It does. True.
Right. Because there's all these subtleties that go on and play out, which is what we do here at Sexy Marriage Radio. So welcome to the show, by the way, alongside my wife, Pam. We're having honest conversations to try to enhance connections in the bedroom and out of the bedroom. And in today's episode, we're going to be doing a lot more in the bedroom conversation because this is where a lot of the energies play out in good ways and in bad with our reactions and what we may seek from each other.
I'm going back to that, what you just talked about, people noticing though, and maybe it ends up being a different episode somewhere else. But okay, so if someone doesn't notice, okay, oh, they didn't notice. Well, then I think of my son. I got some highlights in my hair.
Right.
And literally, it was like 8 weeks later that he said, Mom, did you lighten your hair?
Are you doing something different?
And I started harassing him for, seriously, son, you're noticing this 8 weeks later. And so that's going to squash him wanting to respond to anything in the future.
Oh, that is a great teeing up where we are heading, babe.
Is it really? Okay.
To a degree,
well,
absolutely.
Okay.
If you're new to the show and you want to find ways to tell other people about it or just a little bit more about what goes on here, check out our starter packs. These are collections of episodes arranged by topic and popularity. You go to smr.fm/starter. Also, if you like what we have going on here, we want you to be a part of it. So let us know. Questions, thoughts, comments, feedback, 214-702-9565 or feedback at sexymarriageradio.com. So coming up today on the regular version, we got an email from a listener that actually the husband and wife both listen, which I think is an important aspect of this email that came in because we can speak to both of them.
Perfect.
And this is around the all too common topic of pornography usage and its discovery, and then its reactions and how it unfolds after.
So we're focusing on the reactions I'm taking.
We will be landing there.
Okay.
We'll also do a little bit of brief, here's our stances on the subject in case people are new, because we've got people that have come along lately that are new to the show. And there's a lot of variety of ways people respond to this. And we're going to take one of the ways. And then on the extended content, which is deeper, longer, and there are no ads, you can subscribe at smr.fm/academy. We're going to look at the world of sexual polarity and its importance in the bedroom.
I don't even really know what that means, so I'm looking forward to unpacking that.
Well, stay tuned. All that's coming up right after this. So let's jump right in. This is the email that came in. It says, "Hey, Dr. Corey and Pam, I'm reaching out to you today seeking your thoughts as my wife and I navigate through this difficult phase. We've been listeners for a while now, and the insight and discussions you share have been a great source of inspiration and conversation with my wife and I. Recently, she discovered my struggle to pornography. This revelation has understandably caused significant distress in our relationship. And while I'm deeply remorseful for the hurt I've caused, her reaction has added a layer of complexity to the situation. However, it gets even more distressful when her reaction and the magnitude of it has added even more layers of distress. Okay, I butchered that completely. But my wife has responded with intense emotional outbursts and attacks. She's accused me of cheating and has made hurtful assumptions about my character, often resorting to name calling and derogatory remarks. Her words have cut me deeply, and I feel overwhelmed by the weight of her accusations. In her efforts to understand and move forward, quote unquote, as she says, my wife has also become somewhat obsessive about knowing every detail of my struggle. She checks in with me multiple times a day to ensure that I have not succumbed to any temptations. And while I understand her concern and her desire to help, her constant inquiries have become overwhelming and intrusive. I want to assure my wife that I'm committed to our marriage and rebuilding trust in our relationship, which has actually been really good. And we would both say up to this point. However, her relentless questioning has made it challenging for me to focus on my path forward and has created a sense of suffocation in our marriage. Any ideas for the both of us?
Well, I'm glad she's a listener.
Yeah.
Because we can kind of tackle both sides here rather than lots of times where it's just one-sided.
And that's an important distinction because I think it's recognizing there are two sides to this equation. Right? There's two paths simultaneously happening, because a lot of times what will have happen is we intertwine our sex lives and our choices therein and personalize them. Like that all of a sudden, whatever you do, think, believe, fantasize, whatever, all of a sudden now is a personal thing to me. And on the one hand, that's what makes it nice and good. And on the other hand, no, it's intrusive and obsessive and overwhelming.
Okay.
I'm looking at your reaction based on what you did.
No, that's all right. I don't want to dive into that piece of it. I start off with the wording they have here is that she discovered, and I think that how if you don't know if you don't know about your spouse's porn use and it gets discovered, that sounds like it wasn't something that he just disclosed to her, right? It wasn't something that he came to her and said, "Hey, I've got this thing happening that you don't know about,
right?
And I'm going to work on it." It sounds like he didn't fully she stumbled upon it. She walked in on him doing something.
And this is also interesting because the way these things come out sometimes, and this is the complexities, and this is why I think it's important that we unpack this a little bit before we land on both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
Because first off, if you're talking about pornography and our stances and what we've covered on Sexy Marriage Radio, first off, if you're coming to the show new and you're just now hearing this, smr.fm, there's a search bar up top on the website. Put in pornography and you'll get a bunch of shows. I do not have all the numbers of the countless times we've covered this topic, but we have
our story.
We have covered it. It's a part of our journey. Absolutely. But one of these things that happens when you're talking about this dynamic is his journey is her collateral damage. She's not caused when you're talking about pornography. That's one way to separate this first, because I think that's an important distinction.
Okay.
Because tell me if I'm wrong, Pam, a woman in this instance can react as, I'm not enough. It must be about me. If I would have just doing XYZ, he would not have this struggle. I could take this away by just being whatever. And that is the furthest thing from the truth.
I think that would be part of what would go through most women's minds. Yes. And the cheating aspect, the wording there, that's what it feels like.
And the corollary still is true if we reverse the genders.
Yes.
I think a husband would have some of the same kind of thoughts of, what is it about me that I can't provide enough, I'm not enough, whatever, if the discovery happens on her side. I'm discovering about her. So it's recognizing that I'm not the cause or the blame. I'm the collateral damage, but I am responsible for how I respond to what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bulk of what really is going on when we're talking about pornography and the work that happens is I equate this in some of the same vein as working with couples that have had infidelity happening, right? Because there's an element of virtual infidelity that this would fit the characteristics of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bigger issues often aren't the fact that you stray, it's that you lie about it. There's a hidden life that goes on.
Right.
And now
Right,
all
that's
of a
a big
sudden
part.
it's the lie that is the chasm in the marriage.
Which is why I bring up how she finds out, right? So
Yes.
So as a spouse, how we find out about that addiction, what was going on, it was like, well, what else don't I know about?
Okay.
It makes the mind, you start speculating about why they're doing it, how long have they been doing it, what else don't we know?
Okay. So then that begs the question.
What else don't I know?
First off, fair enough. First off, so that begs the question. It's not cool to lie about things that are impactful like this. We're just going to get that ahead of the game, right? Let's just be very, very clear.
I agree.
But what would motivate a grown person to lie?
Oh, knowing the reaction of the
exactly
person that,
right. This is the struggle.
The reaction, feeling like what you're doing maybe isn't right.
Yeah, most of the time, the guys I have worked with,
people that are stealing money are going to lie about it because they know that's wrong.
I'm trying to think of on the pornography aspect with all the masterminds and all the guys I've worked with professionally, and then even just I don't know of any off the top of my head that were blatantly, oh no, I'm good with this. I'm good that I struggle with this. I absolutely love this and keep it. I mean, I don't.
Well, and bring this back to most of our listeners are faith-based.
Yes.
Right? And so there is a belief in God. There's a structure in here that the sexual relationship is between a husband and wife.
Right.
So I think if a lot of our listeners were more secular, there's a different
yes and no.
That tell me, I don't know.
Yeah, yes and no.
That's why I'm asking this question from your client base, because not everyone that comes to you as a client is faith based.
Correct.
Right? And so, what is it the same way for the folks that just have?
I think there's.
I don't really believe in God. I don't.
Yeah, but I still think people have a general understanding and commonality of the sacredness of a marriage vow.
I would hope so, but I was curious.
There are nuances in there where the use is agreed upon. It's not a problem. Just don't keep it hidden. So that again, the same kind of context still applies to what we're describing here. Is just don't hide it from me. Don't make it a secret.
Yeah.
Right. And the issue here, though, is her reaction. That's where I want to land.
Okay.
And I'm not doing this, and I want to make sure we're very, very clear, because you are also a female, that I want to make sure I'm not bashing a wife that's hurt by this.
A porn usage on your part. And so we're going to walk through that here with the listeners. So that's certainly not where we're going, is to bash a wife.
No, but when we start talking about
share experience of here's what worked and here's what doesn't.
Well, but here's and the main thing I want to point out with this episode, Pam, is the importance of understanding culpability in a dynamic, not choices of what people choose to do, though. Right?
Okay.
A guy's pornography use, like this listener, we're not talking about culpability here. It's his. He is culpable
That's
for
all
that.
his, yeah.
The hiding it, the lying it, the not willingness to bring it up, because how often do couples have, and this is just a general question to the nation, where there is a dialogue that happens, the subject comes up, the couples may listen to Sexy Marriage Radio, and we talk, the week was about that topic, and you have a conversation about, hey, is this something you've ever struggled with? And now all of a sudden you got an on-ramp into, I could really address a big issue and get it out of the way ahead of time, or I could cover it up.
Yeah.
And we sometimes will choose, if not a lot of the times, we may choose the path of least resistance, which then bites us later.
Yeah, when those opportunities arise, use them.
Well, but that's also then fueled by, I have a pretty good idea how they're going to handle if I don't come clean, or if I come clean about this,
Okay,
because I know
so-
what their stance is,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's a rigidness, there's a preference, there's a fear, there's a,
Don't you
something.
think fear? I think a lot of this comes to fear.
Yeah, I think a big chunk of when I hear the email, what I hear on both sides of the equation, his journey underneath it all is shame
Mm-hmm.
that he's got to really address. If I was working with him, that's where we're landing.
Okay.
Let's talk about your shame. Hers is fear.
Okay.
Let's talk about your fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is he uses shame as a justification to not come clean. Because I'm shameful. I don't want to bring that forward to somebody else.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? She uses fear as a license to react.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to land on is those dynamics play out in more than just this topic. They play out in everything. Anything you're fearful of, you will react accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Anything I'm ashamed of, I will react accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that wreaks the most havoc in marriage, because you basically are teaching, I can't handle the underbellies of you or the reactions of you. And this is different from I don't want to handle it. This is I can't handle it, because you teach, if she reacts in a manner that is aggressive, character assassinating, degrading with her comments, she's teaching, don't test me in this. I need you to be something that obviously you're not. So that's a tough message to land.
She's trying to face the spouse she has, not the spouse she wants, and she's freaking out about it.
Okay.
Is that part of it? I don't know. Maybe take that part out.
No. I think she's flipped that. She's wishing she had the spouse she wanted, not facing the spouse she has. Because, quick aside, I've had the opportunity the last couple of months to be on a table talk with a dating app for Christian singles. So it's a younger, in general, crowd. And my topic that I do every other week-ish is on sex and sexuality as it pertains to the Christian life and dating and then marriage. So I kind of go all over the place wherever they want to go with the people that jump on with me. And every single time, I've done 4 now. So 4 hours of conversation I've had with this group of with a group of people, which has been 300 plus each time. There is rampant fear, shame, and guilt on this subject, on just sex and sexuality, which we bring this in, and it magnifies. And in some instances, our weird brains, it justifies my reactions. Oh, but I'm hurt. Well, yeah, you're hurt. But is that license to fill in the blank? And that's the message I want to get across.
I think that's a key question right there. Do I have license to say whatever I want to say, or whatever's coming in my head, or whatever fear is throwing in my head, just because I'm hurt? And do I think about the impact that what I'm saying is going to have? Is it really going to be for the good?
Right.
We don't sit back and think about what is it we're really
the better
here.
question to that is, what is the impact of how I'm reacting teaching? If what I'm saying, if what this wife is saying is, I want to be able to trust you, I want to be able to be close to you, and I want to be able to share this part of our life with you, but yet there is a
share, meaning walk alongside, not that I want
not the pornography issue, just the intimacy, the depths, the whole of you, which includes the shame, it includes the fear, it includes the sin, it includes the negatives. If I want to be able to share that with you, well, that means I'm going to be uncomfortable. And if I react with my discomfort in ways that are cruel or over the top or obsessive, I'm teaching you. I don't want to know that.
It's teaching him to shut down, it feels like.
And hide,
Mm-hmm.
which then becomes this vicious cycle that already is present.
Yeah.
And so from the outset with this email, the best thing I want to try to get across is recognize the cycle that you already had going on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's playing out in other areas too. I can almost promise.
Mm.
There's areas where you just don't come clean because I don't want the reaction. Okay, well, what's the motivation of why I don't want the reaction? Because his side of it is he needs to step up, take hits, metaphorically speaking, for his choices, own them, and then demonstrate levels of trustworthiness. I mean, that's the JFF, Jennifer Finlayson Fife quote I love is you have to learn to regulate your reactions to determine a level's trustworthiness of another person. You don't get I need to be able to trust you. No, I get to be able to just watch you and settle myself enough to determine how trustworthy are you.
Are you trustworthy?
In this area? And that's where you start to shift the dynamic to where the power lands on both shoulders more so than she has taught in this email. Her fear rules all. And if you add in a Christian ethos to it, it also comes across as high ground, which is so weird to me, because how often do we put all of the quote unquote sexual struggle, sexual sin, as something greater than other levels of cruelty or greed or
gossip or whatever.
Sin is sin.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Just some have a lot more fear associated with it.
Yeah.
And so therefore I use this as a license to overreact and attack. And a lot of times until a couple will recognize I've got to change that cycle, I've got to change that dynamic, you will continue to perpetuate, and that fear is just going to fester and grow and metastasize. I mean, that's the best description to it. It's a cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it actually could, I mean, this episode, this topic, Dr. Marty Klein is a sex therapist out in California. And he actually just had a post that said, he was using it as an example, and I want to give credit because this is where the idea came from. But he worked with a couple where he's saying porn didn't, or likely may not, destroy this marriage, but her porn phobia could.
Interesting. Because there's not well, okay, fill in the gaps for me there.
Well,
I'm reading, there's not a way to reconcile if this happens because she's so scared of it. It's
right.
fear.
Well, and he's not trying to take the
fear
stance. Right. It's not taking the stance of, well, porn should just be okay. She's got to learn to accept it. No, she has to recognize her preferences are her preferences. She's entitled to them. So is he. And if she overreacts when her preferences aren't met, she's teaching he doesn't have preferences.
He doesn't get a choice.
Right. Because it's all about, how do I just not upset her?
And we're not even saying here, if he's choosing porn, that's okay, and she should be okay with it.
No,
that's
not at all. Not at all.
We're saying that the reaction, well, this goes back to what you already said. The reaction is what can really be more divisive than anything else, because that is a cycle.
Right.
That's a new script you write in your relationship, and that's going to perpetuate on any topic, not just the porn topic.
And these are scripts that were born out in our childhood to a degree, of how I treat a woman or how I treat a man by how mom conducted herself or dad conducted himself because there are a lot of people that have grown up looking back at their experiences of the person that ruled the home was mom or dad, And it's usually by how they reacted to things. Oh, don't tell your father because you know full well he's going to punish, he'll be punitive, he'll be reactive, he'll storm out, or don't tell your mother because, and it's just, those are lessons that get taught that we carry forward.
Yeah.
And again, none of this is justification for the choices we make. It's just understanding this is what fuels it in some regards, like the shame and guilt or the shame and fear. That's what fuels our reactions. So where I need to work is, what's that fear? What's that shame?
Yeah. I mean, his shame is real.
Mm-hmm.
Her fear, her hurt is real.
Absolutely, they are. They both are incredibly real.
So it's figuring out how to manage those better so that you can, once this discovery is made, work together to make something better.
Right.
Because you can have something more intimate after that.
And I've seen this play out on the betrayal side in my office over the course of a year and a half with a couple that he had an affair. He owned it, totally was wrong. He knows it, regardless of how it happened, because they were in a bad spot when it happened. That, again, that does not justify the choice, but it does make sense objectively. Because think about it, as human beings, if we have any awareness at all, we can look back objectively at things and go, well, that makes sense on how that happened. I don't like how I chose that, but all right, that makes sense. And sometimes we'll go to an extreme because we want to justify and make ourselves feel better.
Isn't that why we have history books, to try and learn from the past?
Hopefully.
And not make the same mistakes again.
Hopefully. But their dynamic was such that he was so repentant to the point of putting himself on the cross. This is his phraseology he would use, and he would be willing to stay up there as long as she needed him to.
Okay.
To prove how much he wanted her in the marriage.
Okay.
And granted, he was going to an extreme, largely because she was coming from such an extreme of fear and hurt.
Yeah.
And I finally, after several months of working with them, I think where we finally got a little different traction was being able to clearly state to each of them, okay, ma'am, you could have left, right? You're trying to mold him into something that you want him to be, which may not be realistic. That guy may not ever exist. There may be no guy that exists
that
like that
mold. Yeah.
And sir, you're going to take it right now until eventually you're going to come down on the cross, off the cross on your own. Right? This is that idea of somebody can have a self-fulfilling prophecy of my biggest fear is fill in the blank. And that becomes so known in the marriage that the one spouse is getting accused of it, even though it hasn't happened, that finally deep down they're like, well, if I'm getting accused for it, why don't I go ahead and just do it?
Yeah.
Right? Because out of a sense of control, I want to try to create an environment that's safe for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get that choice really by controlling everything around me.
So what is it if I'm in this situation and I'm reacting, I'm name calling, I'm obsessing over things.
Right.
What is it that opens my eyes to how that's affecting my spouse? How can I make a transition and pivot, Either
you work with a professional like myself to help have somebody else in the room that is in favor of both people, not just one, because I have heard many times clients will come to me and the reason one of them, usually the betrayer, wants to shift is they felt ganged up on.
Okay.
That the therapist took the side of the betrayed. And now all of a sudden the betrayer's got to make up for it to both of them.
Okay.
Which is an interesting dilemma.
Okay.
So you work with somebody, or you have the courage to ask yourself in other areas of your life, how do people react to me and what am I teaching? How do my kids react to me? There's a good source of information. of if there's a certain topic that I'm hurt or afraid about, and it comes up in our relationship with a kid, do I teach them to bring that to me or not, and how I react? So just having courage to have some self-awareness. Ask yourself some tough questions.
Okay.
Because then you can maybe recognize this is how I'm getting in my own way of what it is I really want.
Yeah.
Because then I have to realize if I'm going to get intimate with somebody else, I'm going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be pain, uncertainty. I got to welcome that to a degree and learn how to soothe myself and then take a next step forward together.
Mm-hmm.
Because doing that means and let's end it with this. For this couple, when she brings into context better her fear, her what's underneath it all, and reins that in to a degree that it's actually then used as more fear, not attacking. Because that's what's so weird is, well, I'm just trying to keep myself safe. Yeah, you're keeping yourself safe by pushing people away. So when she brings that into, like, this just really scares me. I don't know what this could mean. It just really scares me. Now all of a sudden he has more pressure to, yeah, this is what has really motivated this. This is the shame I've got. This is the underneath it all for me. And you create room and hold space for both. That's where marriage gets a whole lot better because it's a whole lot deeper.